This is the Dynasty Market Report, where we look at a specific pick or player in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and we try to gauge, what does the market think of this guy? How are they moving them? How are they moving this pick? How is this pick or player being used in trades? Because everyone understands you should be trading in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and everyone understands, well, you should buy low, sell high. But what is low? What is high? It can be hard to know if you aren't constantly checking the market to see what trades are happening and what do people think of those trades. So that is what we are going to do today with JJ McCarthy, quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he's going into his third year, but missed all of his first year with an injury. The sentiment around him going into his second year was Kevin O'Connell can make anyone work. He could make Sam Darnold work. He could take any quarterback and get really good production, both for the NFL and sometimes for fantasy out of them. And then the season started. And JJ McCarthy won in his first week. And then at the end of his second week, people were saying, well, if you think about it, this guy's only had one good quarter of football, and it was good enough to win in week one. And then he got injured. Carson Wentz came in, and he was looking okay. He was keeping the team moving. And then when JJ McCarthy comes back and we start to see him in a longer stretch, and his mechanics are pretty rough, he is not able to keep this offense moving, and he's not able to provide for the other fantasy options on this team. Now, for the NFL, they probably don't worry about the fantasy prospects of Justin Jefferson as much as we do. They care about how is JJ McCarthy as a football player, and it's not great. Recently, the Vikings have moved on from their general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and I think a lot of the speculation is that it's related to things that happened with JJ McCarthy. Now, we aren't going to know. Was he fired because he didn't want to bring in Aaron Rodgers? Was he fired because he didn't want to trade JJ McCarthy to the Raiders? That's a rumor that I saw. Was there some disconnect between what the team would do with JJ McCarthy between Kevin O'Connell and their GM? Probably. He's been removed. Now, it could be because their GM that they just fired wasn't particularly good at drafting or making trades in the draft. He did build a pretty solid team that Kevin O'Connell was able to get a lot of wins out of in a lot of years. But this past year in 2025, a lot of things went wrong, and a lot of them tie back to JJ McCarthy. So if we pull up his value right now, it is pretty low. Just like we were talking about going into the season and into week one. He won in week one, and people are saying, oh, Kevin O'Connell is doing it again. And then we get a lot of dips. And now we're sitting here. He's quarterback 24. And I'm not even sure he should be that high. If we talk about a realistic situation that could happen, it is entirely plausible that the Cardinals say, we are cutting Kyler Murray. And then the Vikings sign him to come in and compete and be the starter for the Vikings. This QB 24 value would be way too high. Now, it's also possible that they trade for Mac Jones and there's a competition in camp and JJ McCarthy wins. And I don't know that this value is going to jump up that high. So if he keeps his starting position, he's about QB 24. What's a realistic ceiling for someone like JJ McCarthy if he's the starter for the Vikings? QB 20? QB 18? Kind of not much higher than someone like a Michael Penix. So if we're looking at the market for JJ McCarthy right now, my gut reaction is this might be the time to move on. I don't know. We would need to see multiple weeks of him performing well before this value starts rising up. Now, if you just want to hold him in the offseason, I think that makes sense too. If you want to hold him and say, well, I got him kind of late when I drafted him in his rookie draft. If it works out, I'll take that gravy. Otherwise, we call it a miss. And you don't need to fully recover that value. That I could understand. The pick value listed here for JJ McCarthy is around the 112 to the 204. And there's not a ton of spots where I would just take the 204. I want to be kind of cute with how I make some trades. So let's take a look at some real trades and kind of talk through how I would handle them. If I have Breece Hall, would I down tier to JJ McCarthy and DeAndre Swift? No, I'd probably take that the other direction. And I would take DeAndre Swift, who could be released by the Bears, who just had one of his best years in a Ben Johnson rushing offense, and take JJ McCarthy and just swap up to Breece Hall, whose value could be rising. I like a deal like that, and I would probably move McCarthy just to up tier to Breece Hall. Now, we already have a video on Breece Hall that you can check out on our page as well if you're looking for more trades involving him. Here's one, JJ McCarthy for Tua and the 212. I don't know that there's really that much of a difference between these guys. Tua is in line to be the starter for the Dolphins this year, maybe. He has a contract to be their starter. It would be hard for them to trade him. It would cost them a lot to cut him, or they would take on a lot of dead cap, and they can't really get out of a lot. So is Tua the starter there? Would I give up the 212 to get off of Tua for JJ McCarthy? Not really. No. Here, would I ever down tier from Lamar Jackson for JJ, a first and a second? Not a chance. And if I only had to give a first and a second in any year to get off of JJ and go to Lamar, I would easily do that because the upside for JJ McCarthy just isn't really that high. And if we get to that upside, it's going to take a while. We're going to have to see a lot of games of him performing to undo the stink that has been there. Think of someone like Bryce Young, who has had good stretches in his career. His value never shoots up that high. And JJ McCarthy would have to be on that path and then heavily outproduce Bryce Young, who led his team to the playoffs this past year. I'm not sure that I see that happening. So if I could get Lamar Jackson, I'd be plenty happy to do that. Here's a deal, JJ McCarthy for Chisholm and a second, Efton Chisholm. If I have Efton Chisholm and a second, I'm fine moving them and bringing in JJ McCarthy. And that's about the price where you would buy in on this guy. 27 second, a mid-second round pick this year. If I can get him for the 206 or lower, I'd definitely take that shot. There is a chance that JJ McCarthy is playing and plays well. Like, players do get better in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell is still a good coach. Just because he didn't make JJ McCarthy work in his first year as a starter doesn't mean he can't in other years get him back to fantasy relevance. So if I could get him for a second round pick in the future and a very low value player, sure. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't use this as an off-ramp for JJ McCarthy. Let's find some other deals. Just bopped my chair and almost slipped over. Let's find some other deals here. JJ McCarthy and a 27 fourth for Travis Etienne. I like this off-ramp. If I could use McCarthy here to get into just Travis Etienne, a player who, if you think about the value changes that could happen this offseason for Etienne, there's not a lot of news that could come out that would bring his value down. Travis Etienne leaves the Jags and signs somewhere, it's probably as a starter, so that would be a value increase. Travis Etienne, if he stays with the Jags, we've seen him as the lead back in a 2-back rotation there be a really solid RB2. There's not a lot of opportunities for Travis Etienne to lose value, and if JJ McCarthy isn't named the starter for the Vikings, there's a lot of opportunities for him to lose value. So sending a 27 fourth on here doesn't make any difference to me. I would be happy to just swap out because people like Travis Etienne much more than they like JJ McCarthy. So even if you're just floating these guys in trades and you're saying, I'm going to get off of McCarthy, get Etienne, and then move Etienne, like maybe you have a lot of running backs, that wouldn't make a difference to me. I would be happy to take on Etienne because I feel much more comfortable that I can ship him out in another trade. If you send JJ McCarthy as a trade to someone, there's a very real chance you're just going to get a response back that says JJ McCarthy stinks, even if you're giving them a great deal. You could be sending something like this where you're getting a second round pick only back, or the one that we looked at that was a second round pick and was it Efton Chisholm? Someone might see that and just go, JJ McCarthy stinks. I'm not giving you a second round pick for that. And you're less likely to get a response like that with Travis Etienne. So if I could just make that swap, I would be pretty happy to do that. And that's the type of off ramp that I would look for with JJ McCarthy. Now, if you need to build this into a larger trade, to do that, something that looks more like this, I'm not necessarily picking out the players here, but 4 for 4, 4 for 3, and you're kind of just sneaking in a swap of McCarthy for a running back with better name value or a player with better name value, I would be pretty happy to do that. Maybe this is an example here. Darnold, James Cook, and a first for Addison, Zay Flowers, JJ McCarthy, and Cam Scatabo. Yeah, we could probably pull out like McCarthy and Darnold or McCarthy, I mean, there's a way you could pull JJ McCarthy out of here to make an even deal. But if I need to package him in with a lot of stuff to just kind of swap for things that have better name value, I'm okay with doing that as long as I'm getting around the 112, 110 price, that higher end of the range. So basically, if you're looking at any trade, if you could plug in the 110 for JJ McCarthy or the 111, does the trade still make sense? Then I would throw JJ McCarthy in there and use that as an off ramp. I'm not sure that I would do something like this, though. JJ McCarthy for just Jaden Higgins. I don't know that the upside of Jaden Higgins or the name value of Jaden Higgins is anywhere near Travis Etienne. So even if I have to add a little bit more onto a trade like this to get out of JJ McCarthy, I think I would. There's not a ton of spots where I'm getting in. And mostly, I think it's an okay time to still get out with McCarthy. And that's going to bring us to the wrap here. If you've made it to the end, thank you very much. If there's a specific player that you would like to see covered on one of these, let me know in the comments. We also drop short form videos on YouTube Shorts and TikTok each day. So some of the names that have been asked about may have already been covered there in a shorter video, or some of the ones that you ask about might get picked up there. I think we're just wrapping it up. We'll just wrap it up. Thank you very much. We will see you in the next one.